resolved by becoming rich.
Take all your money, buy Bitcoin.
It's not. We're going to take off, go to the moon. But momentum, which is still a couple of days left, is clearly weakening to the downside. After 3 expansive weeks in a row, we finally hit a pocket where I guess enough people had lost enough money and had been wrong long enough. And also, most importantly, price had went to somewhere that they couldn't imagine it going to. But we got that wave of forced selling. I covered this on last night's end of day recap with the market close stream. But at a certain point, it had to go through 75. Because, of course, 75 was the level that everyone says it has to hold. If it doesn't hold 75, it's fucked. Or even if it doesn't hold 70, then we're really fucked. So where better to go than 60? Market will inflict the most pain. And what's the most pain from here? It's not lower right away. It's, of course, chop. And that's what you're going to see. I think we're going to see a compression. Volatility is going to die. And the market is going to go into a period of consolidation. We'll see how today goes. That may change, but there's a few clear price signals and also some data signals as well that would indicate that. Today's close does matter though, and really, because we're going into a weekend, so does tomorrow, although it's just going to make people think that either the bottom's not in or whatever, but I think it very much is. I bought some spot Bitcoin just below 62, just in the 61s last night, and within minutes it was gone, meaning the market was gone, not the Bitcoin. It didn't get hacked. As it was coming down, it was just before I did the daily close stream, I just thought, I'll buy a little bit more Bitcoin for the long-term stack, so not a trade. And it was somewhere below 62, and then I just remember seeing price come all the way back up and like, oh, it's to 63, oh, it's to 64, 65. I went to sleep and thought, I'll wake up and I'll see. If I wake up and it's the same price as I went to sleep at or higher, then I know it's the bottom. And it is. So yeah, bottom's in. This is all based on many things I've seen over and over and over again in the past. Typically, you don't get an entry like that and then price just comes back to it. So if you didn't get 60 or 61 or 62, you probably won't see them again for a while, but you'll see them again. I've no doubt about that. There'll be a retest. And yeah, I've got very, very high conviction this is the bottom. Now, when I say this is the bottom, I'll just keep being fucking clear that the market takes time to bottom out. It will come for some kind of retest. It may not even be the overall bottom. Maybe this is just another temporary bottom, just like it was at 80k, but this is far, far better, because 80k was never a good place for it to stop anyway. You could see price full retracement of the move. I said it back at the time. You go back and check Beyond Bitcoin or weekly, monthly previews or whatever. But the same thing, it exhausted the downside move and then it had the trade sideways for a bit. So we'll see something similar. The reaction of this will be a good indication as to the strength of the market. And it's not going to moon from here, I don't believe. I think the selling that has taken us down here has set the market back for a bit. It's going to consolidate. Even if it does have a sharp rally, that's most likely going to get sold into, and you'll get that retest that people think they won't get because it'll rally enough. So all the usual stuff. We'll probably have a pretty strong rally to come, and people will get trapped at the top of that, and then it'll go back down into the 60s, and then they'll panic and sell and all the usual stuff. If you can zoom out and look at the weeks, not the minutes or the hours, or even the days really, the daily candle matters. If it closes like this or anything like this, momentum is done. So there's no more downside momentum at that point. That means one of two things. Either the very next day or within 2 days at most, you can go lower like it did here. Right? You can have this downside momentum slowing, and if it immediately gets sold into, we're back on the train again. See you in the 50s. If there's anything else, any kind of pause, any stop, because this is all about momentum. This move only got to 60. You have to understand the nature of momentum, and these are forced flows. These are not willing sellers. This is a big unwind of positioning. This is forced selling. When it gets that downside momentum, it keeps going.
Order filled.
It creates more forced selling. The options markets went crazy, particularly on IBIT. I'll show it in a second. The volumes are way up on them at historic peaks, at put call ratio that's always been a bottom in the past. These are all these things. When that stops, as soon as it stops, the market will settle. Too many people want a V reversal or a new low or whatever. What you're going to get is whatever the fucking market gives you. What you're likely not to get is a good entry or a good exit for any of this high time frame stuff in the next few weeks. Meaning, you miss 60. By the way, it never touched, or it did on futures. Binance bottomed at exactly 60. You see on the top here. Binance bottomed at exactly 60. Indicating, of course, that when price reached that level, there was a wall of demand that could not be breached. And you will not get 60k again if this is in any way a floor. You'll not get it for, on average, typically, like 2-3 weeks minimum. If you start seeing price, these are just a couple of passes out yesterday, enough to move this, or last night before I logged off. First thing is the big double impulse gap. Wherever today closes, that will create a gap. If it doesn't, which is possible, we get a strong rally and it fills that up, bottoms in. Never would I have seen an impulse gap like that get filled up the next day and it not be some kind of significant bottom, which would mean that we come back for a best retest, and then you probably see a nice strong reaction rally later on, and then price will go into consolidation. And if it tops somewhere else, then it does. But we're looking at
order filled.
Investing, totally different game. Bought a little bit of Bitcoin, leave it for the long term. The high time frame chart still broken completely. The weekly and the monthly have loads of work to do. But this is, just everything really, really clearly pointing the exact same way. So if your brain has been forced into a bearish mindset because of recent price movements, I gotta remind you that price action beats everything. Price is everything, and it's giving all the signs and signals and telling you that now's not the time to expect it to keep going lower unless it goes lower. I mean that very simply. This can come back down as low as the 60 area and still be a bottom. Until yesterday's low breaks, there is absolutely nothing, no downside momentum. None. Just remember that. Because sometimes, even when it's bearish, you crash, you come back for retest. If it doesn't break the low, it's not going lower. It holds. Now, yeah, that's still a bearish market, but what happens? It goes from 103 all the way to 115, 116. As a trader, there's opportunity there. You don't want to be short here. You don't even need to be long through there. You want to be short there. Retest. But you want to be watching these levels. Hits into 100. Next day, can't go below it. Holds, moves up first, then down. And it's time more than anything. So even in bearish local bottoms, which is why I'm saying that when I say the bottom's in, you know as a trader what that means. It means that we're not going lower right away. And if the market is going lower, it's got to break 60. Sounds basic. But momentum is all about that. There can't be another wave of selling until it goes below 60. There can't be a wave of liquidations until it goes below 60. On the way up, will people sell and de-risk? Sure. But that's not new lows, is it? Can it find resistance? Yes. Will it pull back? Yes. Will it look like it's going to almost break it again? Sure. I'm sure it will. Does that at every major bottom? Those arrows will make sense in a moment. Right. Crash in August 24, comes back a month later. Looks like it's going lower. Does it? No, because it actually has to go below that. And you're like, oh, well, that's so far away. And what? If it doesn't go below the fucking low, it's not going to unlock a new wave of selling. Forced selling happens when price makes new lows. That's why there was forced selling when price broke 80. and forced selling when it broke through 75 and 70 and into the 60s. And when it stopped at 60, there can be no more forced selling until we go below 60. There can be willing sellers. So as it rallies, people who say that move has invalidated my whole thesis for Bitcoin. That's not what I'm saying. I think this move is great in the long term. You need to wash it all out. But there'll be a lot of people who say, no, our view of Bitcoin has changed now based on this structure and this price action, and we want to exit and de-risk. They didn't panic on the way down, but they're going to sell on the way back up, sell at 70, sell at 65, sell at maybe 80, whatever. They'll just get out and say, yeah, had a good run for 3 years in Bitcoin, let's wait until the structure's built back. And there'll be a lot of people to do that, and it's a pretty smart thing to do. If you're not a long-term investor, if you're thinking about trading momentum of bull market cycles, there's going to be a lot of people, even like when we came into the bottom of 2022, you had that collapse below 20. Well, that collapse below 20 shouldn't have happened if you listen to the drones and fucking bots online who think that Bitcoin has to do the same thing every single cycle, even though it never does, except one thing, which is time. It's weirdly always 12 months top to bottom, yeah, that's the 4-year cycle, but it never does it the same way. In 2018, I'm not going to bother going back to 2014, but in 2018, it crashed 60% in 8 weeks. So it did most of the bear market price-wise in 2 months. It then dragged on for 10 months to put in the last little bit of price. But price-wise, it didn't move for 9 months and then dropped for a month. And then it was the bottom. That's one way. So then when it came to the next bear market, it didn't do that at all. Totally different. Same in time, 12 months, November to November. But totally different. Dropped 45%, bounced, dropped again, looked like it was holding. Months. This was 6 months after the top. Then it started to break the prior structure. Then it dropped. Then it went sideways for 4 months again. June, July, August, September, October. And then final collapse. But after this last drop, after it broke through 20, that invalidated a bunch of people's long-term thesis on Bitcoin. I remember it at the time. I remember that when it went through 20, they said, that's broken. Oh, not good. So what happens is if they don't panic sell, on the reaction they start selling. And you see this weak bounce, it gets to 24, 23, 25, and they sell. Now, smart people within that would just say, okay, smart people probably would have already sold by that point, but if they hadn't, or maybe they went long. Maybe they went long thinking that 30k was holding. Okay, everything's easy in hindsight, so give benefit of the doubt, you could say, at the time. And it's not really hindsight, because I was here trading at that time, and in this campus. But there, if that's all you could see, and you saw that weekly, failing to break 30k, and it comes back inside, no, I wouldn't buy into that. I would wait for a weekly close, one green week at least, but you could say, all right, let's go long, stop at these lows. Yeah, if 30k is holding, here's a good spot. And then that gets invalidated, and it breaks down. You say, all right, cool. The momentum's not back yet. That was the last shot for Bitcoin to hold the key level, and it didn't. So we exit. And they would exit either on that drop or on the bounce. And when do they re-enter? When momentum returns. Because they've probably learned their lesson about not buying when the momentum is against you. But rather, let's wait till Bitcoin reclaims some uptrending structure. Like it always does in big bull markets. It is green weekly bands. It comes back above the 50 week. It comes back above the 200-day moving average. Whatever you want to use. Price reclaims its breakdown levels. Whatever. And so wait. Doesn't reclaim anything. Doesn't reclaim. Goes lower. Doesn't reclaim. Look. Now it's starting to reclaim. Now we get back above the prior high that led to the lowest low. There's one reason to get back in. Then the weekly bands go green. Another reason. Then the 50 week gets reclaimed. There's another reason. Then price turns 25k from a resistance into a support. There's another reason. And that's when all the money starts coming back in. That's when accumulation really begins. That's when bidders bid and hold. And Bitcoin's back in that good, uptrending, momentum-driven, trend-following, long-term structure. We don't have any of that yet. So we're at a point where downside is exhausted for now. I still have to see this weekly close, which is 2.5 days left. So cannot be certain of anything. I think the bottom is in, but monitoring it, as they say, monitoring the situation very closely. And today's daily will be a big sign on that. You do not need to see it rally to 80k and squeeze the bears. Fuck the bears. It doesn't matter. That's nonsense. Because it's not the bears that have been wrong here in any way. It's the bulls, obviously. It's the delusional bulls that just keep doubling down on it, or the over leveraged, which is a lot of it. You know, people just that are forced to sell because price drops so far so fast, and they don't manage risk. And they don't withstand, and they don't have a long-term approach, because nothing changes for Bitcoin in the long term. Just like it didn't change when it went to 15k or it went to 4k in 2018 or whatever. You just got to ride out the volatility. The volatility of Bitcoin is the biggest gift that you have, because that's how it can go up so much, because there's a possibility it can go down a lot, and a lot more than you think, and a lot faster than you think, and that flips people like that. Boom. Now it's like, oh my god. Well, now we see it go down a lot, so we must look lower. Well, what about 50? I don't know. There's a lot of liquidations at 50. What if it hits all this? What if the sun explodes? Not the time to be thinking about it. The time to be thinking about that would have been, like I said last night, all the warning signs price gave triple top at 115 and above, 120. It gave a weekly structure break. It gave the bands going red. It lost the bands. It lost the 50 week. All of this happening above 95. It even gave a retest of that, and so on and so on and so on. It gave 9 weeks to exit at any point there, and then it dropped even more. So the only sellers here, again, forced sellers, those selling really against their will, not because they want to, because they have to. Either they're getting margin called, they've no other choice, their thesis is finally invalidated, so they have to get out. It's like you can't keep saying Bitcoin has got some kind of bullish momentum when it's going the complete opposite way. And so that will have to rebuild. It takes time. You can get a sharp reaction rally because you clear out a lot of the selling all at once. You know, you go from 97 to 60 in like 3 weeks. That is a huge amount of sustained, unrelenting selling. That's a lot of selling of real Bitcoin, of paper ETF Bitcoin, of Bitcoin futures, of everything else. So there's a lot of heavy selling, and that selling is finished for now. And when you get so much selling in such a short space of time, you don't have as much left to be sold. It's pretty simple, right? The sellers have sold. So as it rises, there's less to be sold. Those who sold at 90 and 80 and 70 and 65 and 63 and 62, well, as it goes back to 70, they have nothing to sell. They've already sold. If it goes to 80, they've actually got nothing left to sell. It's already been sold. That's why you can see a low volume but big move rally. So if you see a rally and it's low volume but it moves a lot, that's because there's just an air gap. There's just a gap, a pocket of lack of liquidity where there's no one really left to sell until price reaches a point where new sellers get unlocked, which is usually like the de-risking. The first thing you have is like the chasing rally. People who see this as a really good spot to grab some Bitcoin, or shorts that have piled in that can get forced out on the way back up, as we're starting to see. Now this open interest build up all the way down. Some of it's starting to roll off, as you'd expect, because this is longs and shorts. The long side never got flush liquidated, indicating that this would be more hedged by the looks of things, because Bitcoin dropped 20% in a week, in fucking 2 days. Dropped like 20% in 2 days. And all of this open interest, if this is like DGen fucking 100x, 50x, 25x, 20x, 10x, 15, that's higher again, even 5x leverage. If this is some retard leverage long, why was it not wiped? Because it wasn't like retard leverage long. It's clearly accumulation of positioning. So shorts were building up. And also, because it's rising, so do our longs. But obviously this is not like some dumb money retail move. This is heavy accumulation of shorts, and longs were building at the same time. The longs, of course, were long, but you have to say why. Long, why? Were they long because they're long Bitcoin price directionally, or is that hedging against short exposure, like selling? Is it hedging against options flows? Probably, a lot of it. I'll show options in a second. Now, though, touch 60, go just below it, wipe off some of that on the way up. So you're now seeing shorts closing and longs closing into it. That's how it goes down. Both shorts and longs closing. So the longs are closing at a loss if they're directional, of course. Because even this last wave, this last push of open interest rise started at 70. And now it's coming off from 60 up to 65. That means the longs that built up from 70 down to 60 are closing mostly at a loss because it's not got to 70. And the shorts that were building up are closing, of course, in profit. So they'd be taking profit. Short squeeze. Yeah, not really short squeeze, no, because the shorts have been completely right all the way. And if they're covering, it means they're probably taking profit. The short build-up was from 76. So now that it's coming off at 62 and 65 and 66, that would be in profit for most of them if they're directional. And that will continue. And will probably continue rallying either a strong squeeze, which gets people into the short squeeze mindset, or just slowly kind of grinds its way higher and watch this open interest come down. But overall, it's reached a point of exhaustion of daily momentum if today's daily closes like this. Still, again, 11 hours left. Anything could happen. But I think we've seen enough downside for now. We've sufficiently flipped sentiment completely to the point where people think it's all over. And for altcoins, I do think it's over. Has been over since, well, the whole cycle really. You know, the fact that the altcoins did not make an all-time high this cycle is your first tell. Individual alts, some of them did okay, but I think most alts are generationally cooked, and there'll be some that will come out of the ashes. Because they're down so much, there'll be some nice rallies off the lows in some of the oversold stuff in future. But the altcoin thesis has never been weaker, and for good reason, because they don't do anything. And the market has voted and said that. You don't need to fucking come at me about it. You can just look at the charts. And Bitcoin, though, is different. Bitcoin is not dead. Bitcoin will come back again, of course, as it always does. But now we're into the consolidation phase if there's no more downside momentum to come in the short term. One thing to watch for is today's gap. Wherever it closes today, whatever gap gets left behind, that's your initial resistance to watch. And you got to be watching that, because if we see it rejecting off this, let's say it closes here and it cannot push higher and it starts getting sold down into, you want to be watching there carefully for a break of 60, because that can unlock another wave into the 50s. And the bottom, much like over here, like the bottom doesn't have to be the absolute price tick low, right? We bottomed in February and strong rally, Trump tweet about Bitcoin Reserve, came back, hit the lows, came back again, hit the lows. But it was a bottoming process, because bottoms tend to take time, as do tops. It took 3 months to top. 4 months for it to really play out. This one took 2 months and 3 pushes. This one took about 5 months in July, and then again in August, and then again in September, and then really into October it recovered. Multiple tests during the rebuilding in 2023. June, hit it again in August, hit it again in September. It takes time. Even FTX collapse, hits it in November, hits it again 2 weeks later, comes back again a month later, can't make a new low, then starts to recover in January. 2 full months, so on and so on and so on and so on. Big crash in 2021, 2 months, it's in May, test it again, 2 months later in July, we bottom out. So local bottoms, whether it's just like this, it's a pause before the eventual deeper decline, well, that's still bottomed in January. It did not go lower till May. So that could be, when I say bottom right now, it could be that. Maybe 60 is the low for now, and we end up going lower to 50 or 40 later on, but that's most likely only going to come after a long period of not making new lows, clearly. And in between, you have everything. You have, just like we did in 2022, if you look at all this, it's like bottoms. Oh, it's not going lower. Oh, it's coming up. Oh, we're back above the 50. Oh, we're so back. Oh, no, it's over. Oh, no, we're back. Oh, no, it's over. Oh, no, we're really back. Oh, no, it's over. A lot of this is going to be happening. The it's over, we're back cycle. So my main view would be here, forget the downside momentum move, that's finished. Unless it somehow picks back up again, which is not impossible, it's just very, very improbable because of several things. Namely, now funding has finally flipped negative, about time. If you look at what we've been tracking for a while, Coinbase is finally getting back to almost parity with perps. So for the last, I don't know how long. How long have I been going on about this? Fucking 3 months. Most of November, December, and January. Yeah, pretty much 3 months. Because the Coinbase negative premium began not after October 10th. That was Binance crash predominantly. Then the Coinbase and the ETF outflows really picked up. And since then, Coinbase has traded at this deep discount, which you can see there with the bottom paying quite literally and figuratively. And you saw Coinbase negative premium here on the way down. Briefly kind of normalizes in December, but then quickly picks back up again, and Coinbase trading deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, reaching its apex, reaching that peak yesterday with total madness, mania, everything. And that now will probably normalize. And as that normalizes, once again, we'll see price likely normalize too. So it's coming back closer to where the perps are. Perps are still trading a little bit higher. I think part of that's just Coinbase price being dislocated. It'll take a little bit of time. Binance is still trading now at about a $70, $80 premium to Coinbase. Previously, Coinbase was trading like $150 to even $200 lower. So it's starting to normalize. And I think that will continue. And IBIT seems to have been where most of the action was. Not the ETFs themselves necessarily, although we don't know BlackRock's number until tonight. IBIT ETFs, there's obviously a bunch of ETFs, but IBIT's the biggest one. The report's a day late, so what you see there for IBIT, that is not from Thursday, that's from Wednesday. So you'll get Thursday's number on Friday night, as we always do. So we might see a big number on IBIT, could be 500-600 million or more for yesterday, which will come tomorrow. And over on the other side, parts of TradFi futures market, so CME futures. This is just a 1 month view, so looking at the open interest on options declining, open interest in futures declining, futures volume picked up as you'd expect, but nothing crazy, not even the highest volume in the last month on yesterday's move, so not so much happening on the futures side of things, not happening with CME options for sure, that's pretty low. And where it is happening, or has been happening, is over on IBIT. So this is options volume history. This is historical option volume for IBIT. This is the two primary options venues for Bitcoin, IBIT and Deribit. Deribit is the centralized exchange, it's the offshore, it's the global options market, and IBIT is obviously US based, regulated. And what really matters here is just the total volume and then also the put to call ratio. So big spikes here indicate just volume. Volume matters most. It indicates just how much activity there is. So a call and a put, these are options contracts. So a call is obviously people buying calls are betting on price to go up. People buying puts are betting on price to go down. Doesn't even matter so much about that because options markets are not for directional trading only. In fact, at least how they're supposed to be, or historically, options markets are not for directional trading at all. It's kind of morphed into that in this weird financialized world we have. Options were always historically a way to hedge against the exposure you have. So don't look at it as
order
call
filled
buyers or put buyers. Just look at the total and the spikes. And the spikes in volume, it's hard to get, you see there, right? So puts and calls. So the whole market went crazy. In the more recent times, we see these spikes like November 4th or November 21st. You see big spikes in total volume on IBIT, but still dislocated, as in like 1.47 call volume, but 630 put volume. Same again in the 21st, 1.4 call, 670
order
puts.
filled.
Yesterday was equal of both. I'll zoom in more, you can see. It was both equal, pretty much, 1.3 million, 1.2, just insane high and like just high volume across both puts and calls. So just a total fucked up options market dislocated almost entirely. And with that, we've reached, when you look at the put to call ratio, this top pane, when this spikes
Order
to
filled.
extremes, it's typically coming at a bottom. And that is not the bottom, but these extreme spikes, like we saw yesterday, we have put to call ratio skewing massively in favor of the puts. You see price bottom March 10th, 2025, April 7th, December 18th, and then yesterday. So if we look at that, December 18th is there. Bottom. The bottom? No, we went lower. Was it a bottom? Yeah. It didn't go lower for more than a month. So the market stopped going lower. That's all that a bottom is. A bottom just means it stops going lower. It doesn't mean bull market's back, baby. You've got high time frame charts that will determine that. You've got weekly structures broken. You've got a rebuilding phase and accumulation. It takes time. The other two that I mentioned there, March, bottom. That was Monday. It wicked lower on Tuesday. It rallied. It was the bottom for about a month. Came back on the 7th of April. And that was the actual bottom, the next spike. And then the market recovered back from there, and away it goes. It was part of the bottoming process. In a bullish market, in bullish structure, with rising trend, with the 50-week support, so all of this is very different to this. This is not in a bullish rising market. Much like the December 18th big spike did bottom the market, it was at the bottom when that put call ratio spiked, but it wasn't the bottom because you're in a falling bearish market. But it was enough to stop it at 85 and it went up to 97. But the total volume there, this is really the key thing. The total volume, even on these, the ratios blow out, like we'd seen back in March 2025. But the total volume, the middle pane, the volume was low and relatively low again. And then some of the higher, just purely volume prints that we've seen here, even though the ratio was pretty low, you saw high volume spike in November 4th, November 21st, big spikes of total volume in options. And that's the 4th and the 21st. On the 4th, bottom. It's 100k. Bottom just for a week and a half. Nonetheless, bottom. Momentum stops, we go sideways. Failed rally, we go lower. 21st, need I say more? Momentum exhaustion, bottom. And that bottom held for 9 weeks. So we've seen much the same. Either the bottom, nice big rally, sideways, choppy, grind, this again, and then lower, or it's so back, we're about to go to the moon. Who knows? But as a short-term trader looking at the next few weeks, it seems pretty clear that Bitcoin's price has bottomed for now and has exhausted its downside momentum. And that's where we're at. So, GM to that. I'll obviously see this as it goes. I've been saying this all the way. It's the first time I've said anything about a bottom. And it's not the bottom of the entire bear market. Is there even a bear market? Well, people seem to accept, yes, now we're in a bear market. I've always said, bear market, bull market, it's nonsense for a trader anyway, because you just trade price. The reason why bear market, bull market is nonsense is what I said last night, and I'll briefly recap it again. This should show you more clearly than anything. Yesterday, you saw it. It was in the chats, it was on Twitter, it was everywhere else. It's like pretty consensus that this is now a bear market for Bitcoin. So when it's consensus that it's a bear market, like I've said all along, and I said this last year and 2 years ago, people always look in hindsight and like, oh, there's the top of the bull market, November 21. So therefore that's the start of the bear market. But that's not the consensus start of the bear market. That's just where the cope begins. And your job as a trader is to get out as early as possible, which you could do with that weekly break and when it lost 60k. Now, when it loses 60k, other people tell you, you're fucking crazy for selling Bitcoin here. It's still above the green bands. It's just a pullback. We're still above 50. It's still, the more it stills there are, the more buts. It's just all the more reason why it can keep falling. That just shows you it's not consensus bearish yet. Then it goes down and down and down and down. And eventually when it breaks 30 and it doesn't hold and it goes to 25, it's like, well, fucking, yeah, it's bear market. your job is not to wait until there's absolute consensus that it's a bear market to then sell as a trader. The point is not to do that, because price gives you indications way before that. You don't sell the market structure break at 60, okay. You don't sell when it closes through the weekly bands and invalidates this top again, sweep it, fails it 3 times, breaks it. You could sell there in the 50s. People say, no, look, it's still above 50 week. But it's giving you so many red flags and warning signs. And ignore them at your peril. Same as the bottom. Oh, it bottomed with FTX collapse, so the bull market begins when the bear market ends. Only in hindsight. The consensus bull didn't begin really till October, November 2023. And even then, a lot of people, because this is what the chart looked like, even then people are like, no, I mean, it's still only coming up into resistance, because all they can see is resistance because they've been beaten down for 2 years. So a year after the actual bottom is when most people were starting to say this is pretty bullish. But even then, it was a lot more. Like, once it started to really move, 50 and 55 and 60, okay, now the bull market's back. As it goes right into all-time high resistance. So this idea about bull and bear, you are not going to make any fucking money if you think that way as a trader. As a trader, you have to be out earlier than the consensus. You have to be in earlier than the consensus, the whole point. That's why when there's signs of it weakening, the breakouts are not like the breakouts before, and price is showing weakness, it's giving you a reason to at least go into cash and just, okay, we'll wait. You go into cash and you wait, and you have your invalidation of that. You say if it breaks and holds 130, then we're back in. That would invalidate all the bearish structure. It doesn't, down it goes. People cope, it's still above 100. They cope, it's still above 80. It's still above 75, it's a higher low. It's this. Now, consensus bear market, as of yesterday. Everyone agrees, right? Well, good. Now what happens next? It stops going down for a bit. It slows for a bit. Now the people who say, yesterday it's a bear market, it goes up, and like, oh shit, is it really? Oh fuck. Now they're going to be spun around in loops. And what do you do as a price action trader? Nothing. There's nothing here to get you like turbo long yet. Just like July 25 was a sign of momentum weakness, just like 3 weeks later there was a failure of that breakout, then there was a structural break here in August. Just like as this was developing across 2 months, you were getting some warning signs, you were getting some early signs from price of weakness. Likewise here, right, you can see the same thing.